I'd like to welcome everybody to tonight's presentation. I'll be your host for tonight's session, and before we get started, I'll just take you through a little bit of housekeeping so you know how tonight will work and how you can interact with tonight's presenter. On the right-hand side of your screen, you should see a little red arrow, which you can click on and will open and close your control panel. You're signed in by default tonight using your computer audio. If you are having audio issues, you can click on the Use Telephone button and you'll see a phone number and a PIN pop up, which you can use to call, and you'll hear the audio through your phone. We're going to need lots of questions and encourage lots of questions today, so please type those into the question pane down the bottom of the session, of the control panel, and we'll answer those either through the session or towards the end of the presentation. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to tonight's presenter. We're extremely fortunate to have Steve Giuliano present to us tonight. Steve's an excellent PGA professional. He went through his apprenticeship about the same time as me and has just gone ahead in leaps and bounds in social media and coaching in general. Just to give you a bit of an idea, when Andrew Rice was traveling around the countryside, he said Steve is one of the only Australians that he follows on social media. So he's doing something right if he's got someone like Andrew Rice giving him a plug like that. So I won't take up too much more of your time. I'll give you over to Steve. So welcome, Steve. Thank you for coming in tonight.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks for having me.
I'll give you control so you can share your screen and we can have some fun.
Awesome. Let me just... All right, I think we're pretty well good to go. Should I try? Let me just see.
See your screen. You want to try your camera?
I will try my camera. I'll see what view it gives.
We haven't tried this before, so you're my guinea pig for this setup. There we go. You're up the top of the screen there. You're all good.
All right, let's create a little bit of a... That's... All right, how's that come through there, Brent, with the camera and everything? I can't actually see myself, so...
No, that looks good. Just to give everyone a bit of a heads up, you can resize it based on if you want to see more of Steve or less of Steve by clicking on the bar across the middle. You can make him really, really small and see lots of PowerPoint, or you can make him really big if you prefer to look at him as opposed to the PowerPoint. But yeah, so no, that looks perfect, mate. Have fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. I've had lots of pretty cool feedback, especially from a lot of the sort of trainees and first and second year pros, especially just reaching out and asking me what I'm up to and some of the, I guess, some of the pathway that I've taken, especially over the last 4 or 5 years moving to Asia. So quite a lot of this talk is kind of geared towards them and the kind of ever-changing golf market, the ever-changing coaching market. And I'm sure there's a whole bunch of guys and girls out there who've got just as much and a lot more experience than me. So hopefully everyone can get a lot out of the webinar. It's the first one I've done. Not a big PowerPoint guy, so there's not going to be anything too fancy going on. It's a lot of the first part of this talk is just going to be sharing my story. And then I really want to get into some Q&A and get a feel for, what maybe add some value back to the guys and girls out there, and sort of answer any questions with regards to my coaching and or some social media stuff that I've been up to. So the title, we kind of was chatting with a couple of the PGA guys a few weeks ago, and we came up with this title. And for me, when I look at sort of an entrepreneur with regards to coaching, it may be a little bit different to, I guess, the traditional entrepreneur that we may hear of, which is passive income and maybe watching your website sort of bring in money with some, ebooks or online courses and things like that. But for me, a coaching entrepreneur is really about decisions and choices. I guess as coaches starting out, often our early goal is to get as busy as possible and kind of pump our lesson books full, and we do that with different programs, be it juniors, be it whatnot. And that was kind of my goal, I guess, early on, to kind of build my name in Melbourne where I was coaching, and certainly got to a good level where I thought I was doing okay for myself. But the coaching grind is really about, for me, would be staying in one particular location for a long period of time. And I think after any time staying in one location, be it a 9-to-5 sort of office job, it can be a little bit hard work sometimes, and we don't really feel like, we lose the motivation. So what I've been able to do, especially over the last 5-6 years, is kind of break out a little bit from that particular mold. And, I'm able to travel a little bit when I want. I would say I now have the option to sort of teach students who I want, and I can do that in a lot of locations. So that's been pretty cool for me. It's not really something that I had sought out to do in that particular way, but it's something that's sort of happened. I'm very kind of grateful for that. So I'm going to kind of push forward here and just go through this PowerPoint slide. So my first 20 years as a PGA member, it's been a long time. As Brent said, we were about the same time going through our traineeships together, and 20 years passes by pretty quickly. But a couple of things that I feel like were pretty solid way back then when I finished my time, and are still now, is the self-awareness that I had, knowing that I was not good enough to be a tour player really at the start of my second year. And the fact that I really dove into the teaching and coaching landscape, if you like, and went pretty full in. I was attending coaching summits and all that sort of stuff when I was a trainee, and really getting as much information as I could, seeing lots of different coaches, as much to work on my game, and also, to understand golf swing and all this sort of thing. So I think I had a very sort of single-minded approach very early on. And I think when you do that, you also have, that sort of comes back at you. So I was actually, as a trainee, I was actually helping out other trainees, which was pretty cool. So they seen that I had a real passion for teaching and wanting to improve golfers, and they were keen to kind of give me a shot. So that was pretty cool. And one of the things that I guess has always stuck with me by some of my early mentors is, if you want to be the best, you're either going to be learning from the best, or you just have some, unique qualities that allows you to kind of stand out. And for me, it was really learning from the best, and I've really continued to do that throughout my whole 20-year journey. Even to this day, I would attend a minimum of sort of 2 workshops or seminars per year, and I still shadow coaches now at least once a year, because I feel like, for me, that's the kind of best way that I can keep improving myself. So I really encourage anyone coming through to keep doing that. As you know, once you get a little bit down the track, you start to establish your own thoughts and ideas. But I think it's always important to keep an open mind and let new things come in and see how they fit within your ideas. So just a few, or just a little bit of I guess, some of the key things that I've just kind of stuck with over the years that have really helped me going forward. So I guess it was about 15 years I'd been coaching in Melbourne, and it had been going well, and I'd won the Victorian PGA Teacher of the Year, and I was feeling pretty good about things. And then I kind of looked at my situation, and I thought, well, is this really all that there is to, for me to be a golf coach? Is this going to be the pinnacle of what I get up to? Maybe I could win a national award, which at the time was kind of neither here nor there for me. And maybe I could do some other cool things in the country, but I'd work with the #1 amateur, male and female, at the same time, and watch them turn pro, and had nice success on tour. And I guess having the opportunity to work with some Asian students back in Melbourne, I had a little bit of a calling to go over there, and I started traveling over there early 2010. Not really there was some coaching, but it was more about just getting a feel for the market. I presented, where I was able to meet one of my mentors, Laurie Montague, at a coaching summit in Thailand. And really, I guess for me, it was just about trying to see what else was out there in the coaching space. And a little slide I've got up here, which is about a little about the population. There's just over 7 billion people, and 3.7 of those reside in Asia. And that really wasn't on my mind when I first moved over there. But since the 7 years that I've been over there, I've really kind of understood how big Asia is in a lot of ways. You could probably blanket Australia over the top of most of Asia, but there's obviously so many different countries and cultures, etc., and there's different opportunities. But I liken Asia to Australia in a sense where, if you're in one state, you could easily jump from another state to another state if you're doing a good job and obviously make a little bit of a name for yourself. So for me, I was kind of done with Oz and I was ready to give Asia a go, and that's when really the hard work started. So I'm going to get Brent to play this video, which is going to talk a little bit about how I got into branding. And before he does play the video, I will say this: I was very fortunate enough to work with an academy for the first 10 years, really just coming out of my traineeship, and it was great and a great experience. But what I did realize after finishing with that academy is I didn't really have any brand equity when I left. The brand equity was in the academy. I was essentially someone that helped to develop the name. And really from that day forward, I was still teaching in Melbourne. I figured it doesn't matter where I am or who I work with or what academy or organization I'm going to be involved with going forward, I'm always going to have somewhat of my own identity. And that's really when I went and started out, got my own website, started a Facebook page all the way back then in 2010, and really started building my own brand with blogging and things like that. So if you're able to play that video now, Brent, that would be great.
Okay. I'll just take control back quickly.
Yeah.
And I'll show my screen really quickly, and then I'll bring up that first video, which was isn't the don't care one, it's the other one, isn't it? Why did we have this business? I'll play that one now.
Yeah.
Just taking a second to load.
Yeah.
Our internet here is a little bit slow at the moment. It's coming up in a sec. Here we go.
So I think getting a sense of like, what are you actually up to is super important. Yeah. And if you're like, I love what I do, well then you should invest in that beast forever. If you're like, I just want some money and buy a home in Jamaica and live there, right, well then maximize it and squeeze it. Okay. And I think it's a very important thing. I just don't think most people know what they're doing. When I say know what they're doing, I mean macro. Mm-hmm. Like, why do you have this business?
Correct.
Give you back control there, Steve.
Gary V. That's great. So for those who are not familiar with Gary V, he's certainly been an online mentor of mine, if you like. No one, I've actually have met him in person, but certainly just more through like YouTube and whatnot. And I think it's an important point for those starting out, because it's such a competitive market. I think it is important to kind of start to understand the direction that you want to move into. And I'm going to talk about a couple of those directions when I first moved over to Asia, and being lucky enough to get involved with Aimpoint very early on, and being the first instructor in Australia to become certified. When I moved to Asia, it was a very kind of open market, and there was not really much happening. But for some reason, when I just skip that. So for some reason, when I moved to Asia, I was touted as the putting and the short game guy, which was kind of interesting, because I really did love the short game and the whole idea of being able to help really fast track someone's scores very much through improving their putting and improving their sort of short game around the greens. And I'll just kind of digress here a little bit. I very much been into like personal development all the way through, and selfishly, I wanted to start kind of running seminars in Asia, and a couple of years back I got together Cameron McCormack and James Seekman and Jeff Ritter, who are all very well known coaches. I'm sure you're aware of them, and really my main reason for doing that was just to learn and develop. And I remember finishing that seminar, and I was pretty pumped, as I'm sure a lot of coaches were, and I thought, I can actually go and do short game schools. Why don't I go and do short game schools? And it was very much the next week I put something together. I'd watched years ago when I traveled to the US how they did their short game schools, and I thought I could go and do that. And so I started off in Singapore, and then through my social media, and I just post little clips. I was then asked to go to sort of Philippines, and then that went to Thailand and Indonesia, and you can kind of see the list of countries there. So that was pretty cool and fun. And through a lot of the networking I'd done, meeting instructors, it became kind of very, I guess they were very welcoming to have me come over. I'd been over there for Aimpoint and now short game schools. And I think, you know, starting out, it is good to have a focus, a niche, if you like, some way that people can recognize you for something that you really love to do. And it was certainly an area that I really enjoyed teaching. Obviously, you could do it in groups, and people can learn and develop. And I see a lot of that now in coaching. You know, you have a lot more specialist coaches, and for the younger ones starting out, I would certainly say it's you know, it's certainly something to consider. Be it, you know, being a really good junior coach, or, you know, putting or whatnot. There's definitely markets out there in that sense. But I would also say I guess at the core of me is really player development. I love working one-on-one with students who are dedicated. These are just some of the students I've worked with in Asia who have had some success. Some on the Asian tour, some on mini tours, some that have made it onto the China PGA Tour. And for me, you know, when obviously you're working with any player, short game putting, you know, they also want you to help out with other areas. So going back to upskilling, it was, you know, I kind of get a sense if I'm not as competent in an area, I'm going to keep upskilling myself till I feel very comfortable. So that also set me on a pathway to keep getting better at my player development, keep getting better at my full swing, and again, allowed me to reach a much, I guess, wider audience that wants to learn all areas of the game. So that's a little bit of background on my move to Asia, and I wanted to spend a little bit of time, I guess, going through some of the social media aspect, how I've used it. I'm going to just kind of roll back the clock a little bit first, because you know, years ago there was no social media. I've always been pretty big into marketing. In the early days, as I mentioned, it was blogging, which I think is still very popular, and it still has a lot of merit for those who are really good writers. But I would really do anything to promote myself in a very, what I would call, soft way, and that was often going on to forums and, you know, offering advice. It would be blogging weekly. Sometimes it would be YouTube clips. And, you know, when Facebook really started kicking, maybe around, you know, 2008, 9, 10, 11, you know, I was using that, you know, pretty aggressively as well. It's a great way to get the message across. I really decided to start using, and I'll skip over now to using Instagram about 2 years ago. And like a lot of my marketing, the main reason I do it is to try and get more business. You know, I obviously love what I do, but it's great to be busy. It's great to start to have a lot of choice when your students start coming in, and decide, you know, perhaps, you know, who you want to teach and don't want to teach. And I just feel like social media has kind of helped to kind of bring a lot more awareness to what I do. I might go into a little bit more detail in a moment, but I did want to get Brent to play this video on something that really was completely a game changer for me about 2 years ago when I started posting on Instagram. And that's the fact that I really stopped worrying about what I was potentially going to be posting, essentially stopped caring about what I thought people cared about what I was posting, and just started doing it, and sort of got my ideas out there. So when you're ready, Brent, I'll let the swearing start.
Okay, I'll take control back. Just to give everybody a heads up, there is a bit of language in this one, so you've been warned. Just load this up. Excuse the slowness it'll take to come up, but once we get it going, it's a bit faster this time. Okay, we'll hit play on this one.
Yeah.
Do you know what it feels like to give a shit so much about what everybody thinks, yet not care at all? Do you know that when I leave here, I'm gonna look at every single tweet about this talk, and if somebody said, I'm gonna be devastated like I fucking died, yet equally don't give a fuck? When you can get to that place, amazing shit happens. You know why? Because you stop being scared. And I want.
Okay, I'll unmute you as well. Can you just click unmute on yourself, Steve? There you go. Oh no, I turned you off again. There you go.
How's that?
Did it change back to the? No, you're all good now.
I'm not sure how good my mic is. I'll keep talking though. So that was pretty big for me, and that was really just a mindset change, and it helped a lot because as Gary Vee said there, he equally cares about like some of the trash that comes in as well as does not care at all, and that kind of helped me a little bit as well, because even though I think as we're evolving, we have a certain way that we like to do things. I think sometimes negativity can help us understand that we may need to be doing something a little bit better. So I really use that as a bit of an evaluation tool amongst anything else. But for the most part, it was okay. I'm going to decide to post a minimum of 4 times a day, and I'm going to try and make my goal is to make the content as, I wouldn't say so much as engaging as possible, but I would say making sure that it added some value to the student and or to the audience, and also to give them an idea of like what I do, what I'm about. There's certainly plenty of, if we just talk about social media for a moment, there's certainly plenty of channels out there that would, I'd say, be a little bit, well, the information that's given, I would say, doesn't add much value to the audience, and or the people that are looking at it doesn't really showcase actually what, let's say, the coach is about. So I felt as I've started to use social media, people have started to get a very good understanding of what I'm about, how I communicate, the concepts I'm about, be it full swing, short game, even sort of diving into kind of mental and player development. And I think that's really helped in a lot of ways, because I find that students now come to me with very open arms. They also come to me with a lot more knowledge and understanding about their journey, how they've maybe how they've struggled with certain areas of their game. And as I mentioned, they're very open to say, hey, I know you could help me with this area. I'm there. Let's do it. Versus it's cut out a lot of the stickiness that I used to have years ago. When a member would come to you and they've got some issues, and maybe you're trying to help them to kind of work through a particular area, and you have to go through a whole mismatch of misconceptions and issues that they're before they've struggled with other coaches and whatnot. So for me, I've found that the social media aspect and posting so regularly on different areas has really allowed students to come to me and be very kind of ready to learn and ready to make changes. And I've found for that reason I'm able to actually fast track them a little bit easier on a technical level. Obviously, any change takes time, but that's certainly something that's been pretty cool, and I've noticed that it's definitely helped a lot in sort of my growth. So that's a little bit about. Let me just pause that. I'll skip to the next one. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about. We'll keep discussing a little bit about how I use it, and the way I've really used social media is to document what I'm up to versus creating content. So there are two ways. You could certainly go down a certain road, such as a lot of the YouTube channels that we might see, where there's a lot of created content, fix my slice, all that sort of thing. I've found even though I might not have the growth of some other really massive channels, I've found that being able to really document what I'm up to from a day-to-day basis, whether that's a student swing, whether that's a short game school that I've just given and I've taken a tidbit from that, whether I'm reading a certain book and I've come across a cool quote and I want to share that. Everything that really I'm presenting, I would say, is in anywhere from a 1 to 7 day window of what I've been up to. And now, obviously, with Facebook and Instagram stories, it's gone even more in that direction. So that's how I've liked to use it, and I think, again, my students appreciate it. One pretty important thing, I guess, to consider with social media is what you're putting out there is really what you're going to get back. So I guess if you're just a swing guy, you're only just going to be posting swings. If you're just a putting guy, it's all about putting, and you're going to have that come back to you in a sense of, okay, this person's a great putting coach, I'm going to get putting from them. So be aware of that. I think it's important because over time, especially if you're young and you're starting to build, people will kind of look back on what you're about, and I think that's going to play out as far as your ability to attract a certain client. So that's a little bit about how I use it. I document, create. I'm really big on the freemium model, which was something that I heard many years ago, maybe even up to 15 years ago, and it's really a model where you're just giving all your information away for free, because the reality is that it's out there anyway. The information is out there. So I feel like anyone who thinks that they've got maybe a secret or they're doing something a little bit different, you only have to kind of dig pretty deep to realize that it's only either being said in a different way, it might be presented in a different way, which is obviously great from a marketing standpoint, but the information really is out there. So don't have any hesitations when you're posting something. If you think, well, I might not want to share this, or it's too good or whatever, I'd say get better at not having hesitation about if you don't think it's that great. Unless it's something that's explicit and really bad, it's not going to take you down. It might just kind of slow you down a little bit. But again, I would advise anyone young starting out to say that you're only going to learn if maybe things aren't as good, and you can kind of just evolve, whether it's of how you deliver, whether it's the content you create. There's obviously a lot of things to consider there. But I'm, again, really big on giving it all away as much as possible. Just to revert back to what I was discussing earlier, my main reason for getting my content out there, and I would say promoting my brand, is really just to get busier. It's the way that I derive an income. It's through coaching. I'm lucky enough that as I've sort of really built my brand, I can then start to move in, I would say, a different range of what I'm able to charge, and the people that sort of come to me for lessons. So I think there's still hard work. There's no question about mentioning at the start being an entrepreneur. It was really about me now having a lot more choice than what I had 5, 6, 10 years ago. I still work very long hours, but I'm able also to to choose those hours a little bit more wisely. I'm able to work with, I would say, a much higher level of student, and I'm also able to travel, which has been just a huge experience for me. Countries like India and Thailand and Singapore and whatnot, and it's great fun, and I look forward for it to continue for a very long time. And yeah, again, it's just allowed me to have a lot more freedom in what I'm able to do sort of from day to day. Okay, I thought I'd just spend a little bit of time just going over some popular posts, and these are really just in the last year. What I would say with a platform like Instagram, which I've kind of spoken about quite a lot, is it's gotten pretty full on for me, in a sense where I probably get more DMs on Instagram than what I do through my WhatsApp or iMessage now. And these videos, although they're not crazy numbers because the algorithms change with Instagram, it kind of shows the power of certain posts, and I would say the versatile way that I like to kind of deliver my content. I do have some tutorials which you'll see over on the far left there, but they're often taken from online lessons which I've been able to kind of develop a little bit, and I'll just take snippets of that and put them into my Instagram or longer form sort of Facebook or YouTube. Before and afters, and we know that these can take a long time for students to kind of get the hang of, but I find that, you know, like we see with the fitness industry, before and afters can be very powerful. I think if they're done tactfully, etc. And even though we can't see the third post there with a student for 2016, but something that I've done, and I really don't see that many other coaches doing it. It's probably done in other Instagram areas, if you like, or genres, but I've actually created hashtags for a lot of my students. And the good thing is I have a lot of students with different names. So this guy, for example, which you can see, which you actually can't see his name, but he liked the post that says Arif Razadi 2016. I actually created a hashtag for him. This was the very first lesson, which was about 3 years ago, and I just called it Arif's Progress. Luckily, there's no other Arif's Progress out there. So about 100 posts down the track, you know, we have a pretty good catalog of how he's improved. And, you know, as much as for me personally, I kind of find that interesting. You know, if I was looking at a top level coach, which, you know, I do follow quite a few, I think it's quite interesting to see, you know, how they've progressed the student. And this is not just technically, it can be from their scoring, it can be from a putting stat standpoint, it can be from a mental standpoint. So just consider that, and that just kind of highlights, you know, how I've used it, which is maybe a little different to other coaches. And on the right, this is again a snapshot taken from a video just during a lesson. So often I'll have my iPhone running during a lesson, and, you know, sometimes it runs for quite a snippet of time, because I'll often send my students those kind of short videos, which could be a drill or something I want them to work on, and I'll just take some of that content, cut it up, and again I'll just post it into my Facebook long form or Instagram short form. And again, what that's helped me to do is, rather than go, what am I going to post today? You know, I have to think about. I just go, okay, well, I've had a super busy day today. You know, I've done 8 hours, 9 hours, whatever, and I can take, you know, this piece or that piece and kind of use that as good content. And I think now with Instagram stories, you know, you could pretty much you can put a lot more information out there for your audience. So those are a couple of my popular posts, and if you look at the reach numbers there, we've got kind of 90,000, 50,000. You know, you get a lot of profile visits and a lot of website visits and things like that. The way the Instagram set up, for those who have a business page, would kind of understand that. So it's been pretty cool. And I would, you know, a lot of people ask me, you know, where does a lot of your new business come from? And for me, it's actually about 80% new business now comes direct from Instagram, DMing, or they can contact you. They can click on your profile and go straight to an email. They can click on your profile and go straight to your phone number. And the rest would be just a combination, I would say, of word of mouth, email marketing, WhatsApp messages that I do for groups. I have groups in different countries where I WhatsApp message them once a month to let them know my schedule. And obviously Facebook is pretty big for me as well. So, you know, coupled with all those other platforms, which I'm still very bullish on, and I still really love to use them, I guess you could hit your audience at a lot of different angles, because you don't know exactly where they'll be. Typically it's 25 to 35 on Instagram, and Facebook's going to be quite a bit above that. So I think the thing to understand in a 5 to 10 year window, a lot of the young coaches who are 22 to 25 are going to be 35. Your students are now going to be in that same age demographic, and so I think it's important to understand where things are moving towards and make sure you're at least in line with the curve or somewhat ahead of the curve. The last post here is just I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of my associations with, and one of the areas particularly that's been interesting to me the last few years, which I resisted for a long time. I really didn't think there was a lot of value in it, and that's the online space. So those who are familiar with Baden and Skillest, he's an Australian PGA member, and he's really done a great job over the last few years, you know, promoting that, getting the app out there, and I think it's a great platform. It's you know, it still takes a lot of work to kind of build yourself up to get to a point where people start kind of requesting and wanting you to give lessons. But for me, it's been one of those kind of extra unexpected things that you know, comes along, you know, once, twice a week. I have a handful of monthly students now that I manage, and you know, in very short, it just allows me to kind of cut back a little bit of my, I would say, face-to-face time, and look at this as another option. Do I think it will get to a point where it's full-time and it's going to replace face-to-face? I really don't, but I think there's a lot of potential there, and it can certainly be something that you know, everyone should kind of look into, and I'm sure everyone has. And I guess some of those other associations just show some of the contacts I've had over the years, if you like, some of the certifications and things that I've done, and some of the people I've been able to spend a lot of time with, such as, you know, Mark Sweeney from Aim Point, and Phil Kenyon, who's a fantastic putting coach, and some of the technology and whatnot that I've kind of used over the years. One of the guys had asked me, you know, how do I keep in touch with all my students? I do it mainly through Coach Now and Skillest, and I'm able to use those platforms to post videos and kind of respond to people's messages and whatnot. It can get a little bit overwhelming sometimes, but I think at the end of the day, it's, you know, it's what we signed up for, if that's what you signed up for, and it's certainly what I've signed up for, and it's what I really enjoy doing. So for me, my 8-9 hour coaching day certainly doesn't stop on the lesson tee. You know, it's in the morning before work, whether I'm looking to follow up with a student or post, and it's very much the same in the afternoon. So I hope everyone got a lot out of that. Time wise, actually did okay. I was hoping to cover that in 30 to 40 minutes, and wanted to really get a few questions in, if they've come in, Brent, and maybe go into or dive into a little bit more detail into some nuts and bolts of things, if some of the guys and girls want to get into that.
Yeah, awesome, Steve. Thank you so much for your time. You've blown up my questions pane. It's the most we've ever had come through so quickly. So normally I've got to start them off, but I don't have to this time. So it's interesting you brought up Skillers, because the first question comes from Baden himself. So he asks, he know that you have spent a heap of time in India, and he said,
Yes.
What's happening with golf over there, and how big do you think the opportunity is?
The opportunity for coaches, and that's a tough one, because India's it's still a very unstructured space as far as you know, roadworks and all that sort of thing, and golf course development and whatnot. As far as like the growth on the ground over there, I think it's pretty big. For me, the two biggest growth countries in Asia would easily be Thailand and India. Just feel like the numbers in both those countries are growing. And I also think you only probably have to look at the tours, and when I say the tours, like Asian Tour and well, mainly Asian Tour, because that's where obviously my focus is, and look at the amount of Indians that won last year. It was the biggest, was the highest winning country of any, closely followed by Thailand. So, you know, when you have the players pushing the envelope, as in at the high level, you know, be it Anilban, be it Shabanka, these kind of guys that are on the PGA Tour, the flow and effect is going to be pretty imminent from, you know, the grassroots and whatnot. So India is a tough place to be in just because of the infrastructure, etc. But I think from a growth standpoint, it's going to be very big. Obviously not as big as cricket, but it's going to be very big.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Sean Ma is very interested in what you've been talking about. He's got a whole heap of questions coming through. So we'll start you off with, do you feel that you would be as successful today as you are without social media?
Yes and no. I'll answer that. The yes would be because I feel I'm pretty driven, and I also feel like I had a lot of success in Melbourne or in Australia, Melbourne, before I kind of moved over here, and I felt like things were going pretty well. So the yes and no. The other part would be, the no part would be, it's accelerated things in a very aggressive way, especially in the last year and a half, more than what I kind of could have imagined, and that's been a pretty cool thing. I think the growth would have been slower, Sean, but I hope that I have enough sort of faith and trust in the work that I've put in to be be the coach that I have today, that I still hope that I'd be in a pretty good space.
That's cool. Now, Sean's asked as well, so going through your Instagram, you don't seem to use much technology when actually teaching. Do you use this more and not post about it, or do you only use it for reference?
So technology, I'm assuming you might be talking about anything from 3D to force plates and things like that. I do have TrackMan and FlightScope, which I would use on a regular basis. I've got some Smart to Move force plates, which I do use. I don't post as much on there. I've used Sam Putlab for a while. I'm just about to get Capto. I have had a KVS, which I'm not currently using, but also looking into that. So yeah, I would say I'm into technology. Maybe it's just not highlighted as much. I think in social media it's a little tougher to get to kind of get the visuals in there for social media. For example, if maybe you're trying to post like TrackMan numbers and things like that. But yeah, I do use it on a regular basis. But for me, I would say the two technologies I would use the most when I'm doing short game full swing putting would be simply my camera and a radar device. Yeah.
Okay, next one. Would you suggest going through aimpoint and swash putting certifications as a trainee, or after you get out of your apprenticeship, maybe with a bit more experience? So that is probably a question you could answer for all certifications.
Yeah, I'm just a big believer in continuing to upskill yourself. So if you've got the means and the funds to go through aimpoint, I know it's a little trickier certification because it's a little bit more limited. And Harold Swass, absolutely, I'd be all in. I mean, literally a week after I'd finished my time, I jumped on a plane to Perth and spent a week with Dave Milne. In my second year, I went to the coaching summit in Australia and went to everyone. And I did TPI, I did aimpoint. I'm just, whether it's a certification like this, or you're able to spend time with coaches, which I personally feel is the best way to learn and develop, because I think it's more hands-on, I would absolutely say to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. The sooner you get into that kind of space, the better, I think. Question about hashtags. So do you find hashtags or tagging in your posts gain more views compared to no taggings? And I wouldn't mind adding to that question. The question that I had as well is, what type of social media posts do you find work best? So maybe there's a two-part question there.
Yeah, and it's a tricky question to answer, because when you say works best, what's the goal? What are you trying to achieve with the post? So I think there's a lot of channels out there that would post videos, if you like, which for me do not showcase what I'm about. For example, if someone's, say, hitting a low cut shot around a tree, and obviously we can see the ball flight and see the curve, I think that's a pretty cool post, but we're not really getting a sense of like how to do that. For me, a post that I would, and this would not necessarily get more engagement, and I think that's a tricky thing. For me, if I'm working with a student and teaching them how to hit a low cut shot around the tree, my preference is to video that, because it shows like the process of what I'm doing. Now, from a purely like social media algorithm standpoint, the first one's going to get much more likes and views because it's, let's say, a 5 or 10 second video versus maybe a 30 or 40 second video. But comes back to what I mentioned earlier. What you put out is kind of what you get back. I think a very serious student is going to be interested in the process of how can I go and see Stephen and learn how to produce that shot versus just seeing the shot. As far as hashtags, I would say because the algorithms change with Instagram particularly, I don't believe there's as much traction now with hashtags, be it golf coach, golf swing, golf lesson, golf, and that changed maybe 8 or more months ago. If you're able to get good video quality, which is outdoors, and you've got nice green grass, that certainly works better than in a studio that's a little dark and dingy, is what I've also found.
Okay, that makes sense. I got a question asked by 2 people, so Isaac and Sam, so they're kind of blended in. So Isaac's asking what you use to edit most of your videos, and then Sam's asking, do you have an editor to do your content, or do you do it yourself?
Yeah, so no to the editor, Sam. So I don't do it all myself, 100%. As far as how do I edit? A lot of it's done on my either iPhone or iPad. So for video editing, for example, I just go into my iPad here. I use an app called Vont, which I'm able to put text onto video, and there's a couple of other ones I use, like Video Collage, where I'm able to kind of split the screen and do it that way. I used to do a lot of through V1, but when I found Video Collage, it became like very easy. So once I've created a video through Video Collage, I can then put it into the Vont app, which is V-O-N-T, and you can kind of make it the size that you want, and you could add text in there, you could draw lines in there and whatnot. And for cutting videos in, you could use an app like iMovie, which for those who have got iPhones and iMacs, it's the same app. And Splice as well. You could join videos and do small editing. So they're probably the 3 or 4 that I would use the most for videos. And for pictures on text, I use an app called Fonto, which is P-H-O-N-T-O. Also a pretty cool app. I believe it's in the same family as Vont.
Cool. That gives people a few different options. They can go and research and check it out. Okay, question about teaching high-level amateurs or professionals. Are you concerned about making mistakes when coaching, or do you learn from every coaching session you do to improve them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that that's always something that's on the back of our mind. Are we going down the right pathway? And there's maybe, I've heard this story before from coaches, and I've probably told it myself. If you're starting out coaching, it could be something like the first 100 lessons, 5 years, or whatever that you give are not going to be great lessons, and give all the money back, because we really don't know. Well, we didn't know as much about what we're doing now. I really feel like there's a lot more good information out there now, and I see a lot of young coaches. I've spent some time with Kerrod Gray, he's out there in Perth, who have really got a good hold on a lot of things with regards to like coaching and technical base and player development and everything like that. So I think guys are a lot more onto it now than years ago, only because there's more information, which can sometimes make it more challenging. But like anything, you have to be good at filtering information and understanding what's going to work for your player. So I'm less in that mindset now about am I going to make this player worse or better. I think that comes through experience. It comes through understanding player patterns and tendencies, and knowing kind of what works and what doesn't work, maybe with their particular tendency.
You brought up Kerrod before, you spent some time with him, so it kind of leads into the next question. So Sean's asking, do you mentor anyone, or would you consider doing something like that in the future?
I do. Nothing like too official. I've had a couple of guys, young pros, who have kind of leaned on me here or there, but nothing as consistent, perhaps, as maybe what I think would work. There's actually one young guy in Perth from Korea who's looking for me to mentor him. And I think it's a great idea for anyone who's who's getting into coaching, because it can definitely fast track not only maybe like your technical proficiency, but I also think the potential pathway you can go down. So years ago I presented in Thailand at a coaching summit, and I met with Laurie Montague. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Laurie, and we had a great chat then. And I was looking to get into Asia, and he was kind of testing the waters, and I asked him if he could mentor me, and we did that for a good couple of years, and that was before I came over here. And so I think having a mentor is like super important, and you can get a mentor for different parts, right? You could get a mentor that could help you maybe with your decision making, that could at least give you certain options, or at least allow you to understand that there's certain options. You can get a mentor who you just purely respect to help your students with full swing. You get a mentor to help you with your junior programs. So absolutely, I think it's very much a fundamental thing. As I mentioned earlier, you're either going to be someone who has an ability to be a trendsetter and you're kind of out there on your own, or you're someone who's following trends and kind of learning from others around you. And I think in that case, a mentor is invaluable.
Yeah, and I think, just to go further on that, I think Australian coaches are always pretty open to having other people watch and learn. I know I've spent time with coaches over the years, and they've always been very, very helpful with questions and shadowing them, which leads to another question from Andrew. He'd like to know some of the coaches that you have shadowed over the years.
Yeah, so I'll start my very first foray. Well, in Australia, I spent lots of time. Well, I had lessons of Steve Bann, Dale Lynch, Sandy Jamison, just to name a few. Dave Milne. I went to Perth. Spent time with guys like Peter Knight and the like. So, guys, I'm sure everyone's familiar with now. When I went to the States, I was encouraged by my boss at the time to go and try and learn from the best that are out there. So back then it was Rick Smith, who was coaching Phil Mickelson and like number 2 in the world. And most people wouldn't know Rick Smith, but we spent a month at Rick Smith's, flew down, Jim McLean, Ledbetter's, Butch Harmon. So my first 4 years traveling to the US was spending time at those academies and those coaches. And, I still actually do that today. There's a good friend of mine based in Denmark, Andreas Carly. I spent a week or 10 days with him last year. As I mentioned earlier, I still try and attend 1 or 2 seminars a year. Last year it was Mike Adams, Dr. Kwan came out. Some of you are familiar with him, and biomechanics. Seen Scott Fawcett for playing lessons. I've spent time with Laurie and Dave. I think they've got a great hold on player development, and they're just great resources. So I just try and keep a very open mind when it comes to instruction and how I'm trying to evolve myself. And I'm not scared to look at new and different things and see how they fit in with my, I guess the way I like to deliver things and if you like, my coaching ideas.
No, that makes all sorts of sense. Interesting question from Alex. He would like to know, when it comes to going from the financial comfort cushion, so to speak, of shop hours on top of coaching, what are your thoughts on when someone should be looking to bite the bullet and take the jump into coaching full time?
Straight away. Now, I say that with kind of a double-edged meaning, because you have to still obviously pay your way. For me, my last day of my traineeship was my last day selling a Mars bar. So I was kind of out and just wanted to teach full time. I was lucky enough that I'd set a foundation in a year and a half, from my 2.5 year to the end, where I was already teaching a lot. And I had my kind of future mentor boss say, come and work for me. So I was lucky enough to kind of move straight into a teaching role. So, when you do kind of go all in, you throw all the chips in, one, you can commit a lot more time to study and watching. I shadowed so many coaches back then, and watched so much instruction, because obviously I just wasn't busy enough. And I souped up my credit cards every year and went to the US and came back and paid them off. And the great thing is you don't have to do that now because there's so much more information out there. But if it's a financial thing, certainly you have to do your shop hours. If it's not, then I would be certainly going all in and committing as much time and energy into to developing your craft.
Brad would like to know how much time you actually spend on your content and your comms through your different social media platforms.
Okay, so daily it's probably averaging anywhere from 1.5 to 2 hours. It can sometimes be very short. Sometimes it's just really, really tough, and it's hard to put something that I'd like to do. Maybe it's a nice before and after, or it's a nice kind of edit of a session. So sometimes it could be just post a swing up, which obviously takes no time. But sometimes it could be a couple of hours on a post as well. So on average, I'm just going to say about 2 hours. And I'd like to be able to do. I do enjoy it, but I obviously still love coaching and whatnot. But I also enjoy producing content. I think it's something you have to be somewhat passionate about. Otherwise, you get bored pretty quickly if you didn't enjoy doing it.
Just quickly tied into that, those posts on social media, do you get permission from the people that you post about before you post, or
yes?
How does it work?
Yes and no. I would generally ask. I would say in 70% of cases, I would ask. Obviously, if it's a long-term student and I've already done so, they're pretty cool. I would probably have 20%, and it's more the pros that say don't post, and obviously I'm completely respectful of that. So yeah, if it's someone new, I would be respectful and just ask if it's something that they're cool about. And the funny thing is, about 30% of the time, I'm getting a comment from my student saying, "Hey, I thought that was a good swing today. Like, why didn't you post that? Or is that going to go on?" So some of it also enjoy kind of being out there.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you brought up Capto putting. Jared's interested in your thoughts on Capto putting. You said that it's popular these days.
Yeah, it's actually coming in. If you haven't received it yet, I have looked at it. I've looked at it with another coach. I'm very big on the portability of it versus a SAM Putt Lab. That kind of excites me because I travel a lot, and it looks like it has great parameters. And from what I've also looked at with the company, it looks like they're evolving, with the putting simulator and the 3D kind of simulator that they have. So I just think that there's always space there for golf coaches that are going to be at one venue and kind of lock themselves in for a lot of different reasons, of course, family, where you're living, etc. But I also think there's probably going to be more mobile coaches going forward. And if you looked at, even if you looked at I would say the Ban Lynch, Peter Knight, the guys that I kind of grew up with, they're traveling a boatload, or at least they were traveling a boatload. So they were still doing it. They were just doing it off a slightly different, in a slightly different way. But I think there's going to be more mobile coaches. I think with good networking, and again, everyone's contactable now. You could DM me tomorrow and say, "Steve, I want to come and watch you teach for a week." I'm like, cool. You just, no big issue at all. And you create a relationship. 10 years down the track, you might say, "Steve, I've got, 4 students I want to take to Malaysia or here for a week. Can we do it at your facility?" I'm like, cool. So I think networking is super important, and it obviously with social media and the internet, everything's a lot closer together. Everyone's just around the corner. It's super easy to travel, and I think kind of digressing a little bit here, but Capto and TrackMan and having apps like Skillist and Coach Now, everything's mobile, and you could move around and do just as good as a job if you're at your home space.
No, that makes all sorts of sense. So Chris is interested in how you structure your monthly plan for students having coaching through Skillist.
Okay, so Skillist it's kind of like a 20. Well, I have 2 plans. So the monthly one is really just a 24/7 access allowed. So if someone signs up, they're basically able to send me any swing, short game, putting update that they want to at any time. And I'm normally on a 2-day turnaround. I have had times where it's taken a little bit longer than that, but it's just basically an open-ended option for them or subscription for them. So it's not something where I say you can only post 4 times or 3 times. It's like, okay, you've paid the fee, you can come in and, you know, if you've got a home simulator or you've got a home space and you want to hit balls every day and send me, you know, what you're working on or, you know, an idea that you've had, then that's an option there through that app.
Glenn is asking, he's noticed with the changes to Instagram that his channel Aussie Golf Pros was going well, and they had a post where they reached the 34,000, and then this year growth seems to have stalled. So what are your thoughts on the change to Instagram at the moment?
Yeah, it's really tough. Like, it's really tough to get a following, and as I mentioned before, I would equally say that my growth has stopped to stalled. Sometimes it goes backwards. I'm not expecting to reach like crazy heights. It's just that the algorithm changed a while ago, and it's very. I don't know the details on it, but it's definitely much harder to build a following, and sometimes you have to do things a little bit different that kind of catch people's eye. But I would say that there still has been good growth. You know, there still are coaches that are able to do that. It's probably a little less about trying to grow it and just put it out there. I know that for me, you know, if something has a good quality and it's consistent over a long period of time, I think it will attract eyes and ears. But yeah, it is very different now to what it was even a year or so ago. I've noticed that hashtags and whatnot really don't make much of a difference at all.
Interesting question now about discounting your fee. So do you ever discount your fee, or do you have structured programs for new students?
I try not to discount my fee. What I do though, as my fee has kind of gone up over the years, if a student is stuck with me, I will kind of respect them and hold that fee. So sometimes there might be a bit of a gap between, let's say, what my current rate is to what it was. I do try and steer away from packages because, you know, there's a great post a couple of days ago by a coach in the US, and I think that, you know, we can offer so much more value now outside of just our lesson. So when you have an app like Skillist and Coach Now, and students are allowed to, and you open that door for them, and you say, okay, you can send me a swing when I'm away or whatever. That's definitely your time. You know, your time is money. Just to reference Kerrod again, he's done a good job of having a program where, you know, the student comes X amount of time per month. They're able to kind of send swings in between that, and plus he has a practice session, much like a gym membership. So, you know, in the future, hopefully it's not about discounting but value adding. I haven't found that balance, I'll be honest. You know, I still have some slight discount, but I'm definitely moving more towards a standard fee and getting my students to understand the value add through, you know, uploading swings or me being on call for them or looking at their stats, things like that.
Now, Christian would like to know, do you ever get any opportunities to get involved in research and how this can also build your profile?
Not really. No, I wouldn't say I get that much opportunity. I mean, I through the evolution of Aimpoint, there is probably some things that I've stumbled across, but I certainly wouldn't say I was, you know, any of, you know, I didn't have nothing that I was involved in was, you know, make big shifts in Aimpoint. It was just small things. So, and I think at the end of the day, once you kind of get into this industry and you've been in it for enough years, you kind of figure out what you do pretty well. And some people love to kind of dive into research. And for me, researching is trying to research more about, you know, understanding, you know, whether it's certain areas of the swing or certain areas of course management. But as far as personal research, trying to come up with like a new theorem or new idea, if that was the question was referring to, I would say no. It's more personal.
Okay, we're getting through the questions. So you've blown up my questions pane. It's scary. So, Sean would like to know, what was the purpose of creating the Scoring Zone ebook, and how long did it take you to create it and publish it?
Yeah, great question. Again, I struggle to sit on my tail when I'm not busy, and when I first came to Asia, I was not busy at all. Those who kind of know me really well would not want to know about my first 6 months over there and the struggles, financially and whatnot. So all I had was time, and I think, in any industry, whatever we do, we've either got time or we haven't. And when you've got the time, you're obviously going to invest in yourself as a person. It's personal development. So for me, I always had an idea of, okay, there's lots of cool drills out there that I've collected over the years from coaches that I've met. And this is a non-technical book for anyone that's seen the Scoring Zone kind of ebook series. And I thought, well, I'm going to compile all these different competitive drills that I've collected over the years, plus I'm going to do a video for all of them. So that was kind of what I had in mind. I definitely had a bee in my bonnet about that, and I wanted to kind of get that out. And I had some guys who helped me kind of to put it together. And my cousin and good friend really helped me with a lot of the structure of it. And I decided to kind of split it up into 4. It did take me about a year and a half. It was spent a little more money than probably what I should have. And in fairness, I probably didn't really, it wasn't really financial rewarding in that sense, but like, the use of social media, it really helped to get some awareness out there about, what I'm about and how I like to work with students. And that obviously was on my website. It was something that, I sold on there. I did post a lot of the videos, on Facebook and my YouTube free. So it's something that I was very keen to kind of explore and do. And even though, a lot of those drills, I wouldn't really use them as much now. There's probably like 20–30% I have changed. It was still something that was great to do and go through that process and do all the photos and the videos. And obviously, it's not a heavy text, that's for sure. But I designed it in a way where, for those who have kind of got it or seen it, you'd go through a scoring challenge, be it a short game or long game or putting. You'd get rated, and then you'd go to various kind of drills that would relate back to your level or your standard. And I attach videos to all of them, so you can clickable into YouTube. And it was good fun. It was hard work, and again, it took about a year and a half. So yeah.
So a full-on process by the sounds of things, which is cool. Last couple of questions. So do you spend much time on your own game so that you're confident to demonstrate or play with your clients? Casey has 2 young girls at home, and she hasn't got much time to spend on her own game for the last 4 years, and the time she does have, she spent on the coaching tee. So how do you cope with that? How do you deal with that?
Well, the first thing is I don't spend any time, almost no time playing at all. I'd say I'd play less than 5 rounds a year. Some of that's back related. When a year after my traineeship, I was kind of diagnosed with 2 bulge discs, so it was good timing, and that still caused some issues for me. I can still hit balls. I have no issues hitting balls if I'm doing a long game school and I'm demonstrating shot shaping and things like that. In short game, it's no big deal. But I do find it's a little hard work playing. I've probably played 1 or 2 rounds in the last few years, but it's a little bit to do with obviously being as busy as I am and not having as much interest in playing golf, and also just to do with my physical condition, I would say. Not that I'm out of shape or whatnot, but just that my back doesn't really hold up to loads and loads of full swings.
That's cool. So do you use any particular app for your students when they're recording data from their round? I'm assuming Stats.
Stats app. So yeah, there's the main one that I've used recently is an app called Upgame. I don't know if anyone's seen that. It was actually developed by a company in India. And the cool thing about Upgame is it's just a topography of the hole. So it just looks like, if you had your yardage book, and you basically just toggle to where the ball finishes, and it brings up, you do that for 18 holes. It's very fast to complete, sort of 3 to 4 minutes. And, it finishes stats very quickly. In years past, and I still do use these platforms, by the way, Shots to Hole, those that know Stuart Leong, it's a great app, goes into a lot more detail. few of my students also use the one through playing lessons. But the main ones I would say I would use would be Up Game, just a more simplified version, and Shots to Hole. And both of those are great because the coach can have an account, and the students and the stats gets sent back straight to the coach.
Which is always a pretty cool thing to have that comes straight back to you and makes it much easier. So, final question, we've kept you long enough. Any intention of coming back to Australia anytime soon, or are you quite comfortable over there?
Very comfortable here. Yeah, no real intention. I still feel like there's a lot of cool stuff happening over here, and there's a lot that could still be kind of developed. And yeah, I guess I'm really enjoying it, and quite settled over here. Yeah, it's never like a not going to happen, but it's certainly not in the foreseeable future.
Well, that's certainly Australia's loss if you're going to spend more time over there. But hopefully we can coax you back over this side of the world eventually.
Come over and do some schools with some coaches and do some collaborations and things like that. I love that sort of stuff. So.
Well, there you go. There's a good opportunity for someone out there to get you over. Steve, thank you so much for your time. It was awesome, great presentation, plenty of cool tips and advice for coaches out there. So thank you so much. Just a few plugs before we let you go. So everyone out there, we've got Ian Peake presenting next week. So jump onto his presentation next Wednesday. The Wednesday after, we have Baden Schaff talking about Skillest. So you've heard Steve mention Skillest. So the co-creator of Skillest is coming on to talk about that the week after. And you've also heard Steve talk about Capto, and the Capto guys are going to come in hopefully the week after that. I'm just in the process of confirming them as we speak. Got an email from them today, so hopefully we'll have them in the week after. We also have, as a face-to-face presentation in Victoria, Stephen Bann is presenting next Thursday night at Yarra Bend. So if you haven't signed up for that one, that would be a really cool one to get involved with. So I will let everyone go tonight. We've kept you plenty long enough, Steve. Everyone's got great value out of you. So thank you once again for coming out. It was awesome presentation. And to all the guys on the presentation, thank you for coming in, and we'll speak to you all again soon. Have a great night, everyone.